I don't know if this video came out any good or not. Shit. So in the comment section of my channel, there was this fellow who wrote that he had been lusting after some girl at work or someplace like that. And he had been lusting after her for like a full God knows how long. And he had finally worked up the nerve to approach her. And she had apparently shot him down. And therefore, because of this failure on his part, he was not going to approach another woman for a full year. I mean, I was, gobsmacked. And I thought to myself, at this rate, this poor schmuck is going to basically approach 10 women over the course of the next decade. And what are the odds that he doesn't, succeed with any of them, that he strikes out with all 10 of them, huh? Low or high? What do you think? Right? Okay, I'll tell you a story. And this is going to sound like a brag, and it's not a brag, but actually it is a brag, so fuck it. Back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, I was living in New York City. I had a place in Manhattan, nice loft. And one time, I think this was in 2000, I banged 7 different girls on 7 consecutive nights. Yay me. I'm telling you this, well, to brag, but also to illustrate a point. See, at that time, I was actually, just chasing girls left and right, morning, noon, and night. And I had developed this rule, a very simple rule. I called it the 3 to the 3 power rule, because I'm nerdy. What do you want me to say? And the rule was very simple. I figured that for every 3 women whom I approached, at a club, at a museum, on the street, anywhere, for every 3 women, only 1 would give me her phone number. And of 3 women who had given me their phone number, only 1 would agree to a first date. And of the 3 women with whom I went out on a first date, only 1 would I end up having any kind of relationship, romantic, sexual, what have you, right? So it was basically, a third times a third times a third. That is 1 out of every 27 girls that I approached would end in success, if you will, right? Which of course meant the opposite, that 26 out of 27 women would end in failure in terms of my, approaching them and then, getting their number and calling them up and going out on a first date and the whole thing, right? So I would have 26 failures before success. And I had this rule in my head and I followed it. Now, the actual number turned out to be totally different. It doesn't really matter. But the point was that, see, I had this idea in my head that I would go out and I would have 26 failures for every success. And that changed my mentality. And in point of fact, it changed my success rate. And I realized that this very simple rule applies to everything in life. Everything in life. Because life is a numbers game. Never forget that. Now see, why was this 1 in 27 rule such a good rule, such a wise thing to follow? Well, because of several factors. Number 1, it was realistic. You see, I wasn't thinking to myself that every time I talked to some girl, she was going to instantly fall in love with her. No, on the contrary, I was very conservative, thinking that only 1 out of 3 would want to give me her phone number for me to call her up later and potentially go out with her, right? So it was realistic. That's always good. Second, it reduced my anxiety, because since I knew that I was going to fail, it was built into my system, right? I was relaxed. I was totally relaxed with every approach. I wasn't stressed out. I wasn't nervous, because I was thinking that more likely than not, this next girl that I'm going to approach, she's probably going to turn me down. And paradoxically, because I had that mentality, more often than not, I succeeded. It's sort of like you play some sport, like you go bowling, okay? This happens to me all the time. I'm a terrible bowler. But when I go bowling with like friends or whatever, usually you throw a few balls first, sort of like to warm up. Every time I do that, I hit strike after strike after strike. When the game starts, when it actually matters, then I throw gutter balls all the time. But you see, my anxiety level is reduced when it doesn't really matter. When I want to win, that's when I start throwing gutter balls, right? If you are operating under the 1 in 27 rule, you're relaxed because you figure that this girl that you're going to talk to, no matter how attractive she might be or how ugly she might be, it doesn't really matter, you're probably going to fail. And because you have internalized this notion that you're going to fail, you're more relaxed. The anxiety goes down. See? So that's the second reason it's a good rule. The third reason why the 1 in 27 rule is such a good rule is because it opens options. Because if you are only focused on like the one girl or the one possibility, see, you're going to grind on it. You're going to be like, put up the girl on some sort of pedestal, think that she's, all that and more, right? It'll blind you to other people that you might meet that might be equally as attractive, perhaps in a different way, but equally as attractive or interesting or perhaps even more so. So if you have this notion that you are going to fail 26 times out of 27, you're open to more possibilities because you're looking for that success. You don't want failure. You don't want to fail 26 times out of 27, right? You're going to try to naturally minimize the amounts of failures that you have. So you'll pay attention to other possibilities. You'll be more open to your environment and the people floating around in your environment. You see what I mean? Now, so far I've been talking about girls, but it applies to all of life because all of life is a numbers game. All of life, without exception. Your career, your friendships, go through every aspect of your life and you will find that at the end of the day, the more at-bats you have, the more likely you're going to hit a home run. You see, if you just keep on going up to the bat, squaring up and taking a swing, eventually you're going to connect. Eventually you're going to knock it out of the park. It's inevitable. A lot of times people say that the odds are against them. Well, flip it around. The more times you play, the more likely you are to win. If you internalize the idea that you are more likely to fail than to succeed at any given moment, several good things are going to happen to you insofar as your head is concerned. The first one is that you will value success more because you will realize that success is few and far between. If you internalize the notion that you are more likely not to fail, then when you finally do succeed, you'll take more care of it. You'll treat it more gently. You won't be so cavalier about it. In my own case, I was exceptionally lucky insofar as publishing is concerned. I wrote a novel, actually my second novel, my first English language novel. I wrote it and sent it off to a few agents. I got a couple of offers and I went with the first agent and she placed it with the first publisher. Boom. It happened just like that. And I didn't value that success. I didn't pay attention to it. I thought, I can succeed whenever I want to. I didn't realize how lucky I'd been. See, this happens a lot. This happens all the times to people who succeed young. They don't value that success and they fritter it away. It happened to me. I was lucky enough that over the course of my life, I was able to succeed at other things. But those other successes cost me. They cost me enormously. A lot of effort, a lot of banging my head against a wall, a lot of failures before I finally succeeded. You see what I'm saying? The other thing that will happen when you internalize the idea that you will fail more often than you will succeed is that you won't be thrown off by any obstacle in the way. A lot of times when you are focused on just, the one chance of success, any little obstacle that happens along the way or any setback, and you instantly fall apart. But if you recognize it's just going to be failure after failure, and that's just a numbers game, and that eventually you will hit it big, then any problem along the way you'll realize it's small in the whole scheme of things. And this is going to be important because, again, it'll reduce your anxiety levels. You won't be so stressed out because stress and anxiety is the surest formula for failure. You'd never want to be anxious. You always want to be calm. You always want to be willing to walk away. You see what I mean? And finally, the most important thing that will happen to you is that when you have an opportunity that is almost a success, but not quite, an opportunity that will make you compromise rather severely on the things that matter to you, you will be able to walk away. Because there is nothing worse than signing a bad deal, a deal that is almost what you wanted, but not really quite. A deal that has all of the major points except one key point that will gnaw away at you. You never want to sign that deal. You always want to walk away. You always want to say to yourself, you know, I came close, but this wasn't really a success. It was a near success, but it was just one more of the 26 failures. You see what I'm saying? Because there's nothing more tempting than to sign to a deal that is almost good, to hook up with a woman who's almost the right one, but not quite. There's nothing worse than that feeling, because it's like you got to the 99-yard line and there's that 1 yard. Now, you can cheat yourself by compromising. Never do that. Never do that. Especially when you're that close. Never compromise. Because at the end of the day, if you compromise, you're the one who's going to be suffering. Okay? If you internalize the notion that it's going to be 26 failures before you succeed, then you'll say to yourself, well, you know, I almost got there. It's the 99-yard line, but it's not really a touchdown. So fuck it. Let's start again. And that, in the long run, is the healthier attitude. It's harder, but in the long run, it's better. It's what you want to be. Never compromise on what's important. On the little things, sure, but on the big things, the things that matter. That final yard line before the touchdown, don't compromise. Don't cheat yourself, because, like the expression says, you're cheating yourself, nobody else, and you will regret it. So don't. It's easy to fall into the trap of the one shot, that you only have the one shot, and if you fail at that one shot, it's over. It's easy to fall into that trap because, in a very real sense, when you decide that there's only one opportunity for you and you fail, it sort of like frees you of the responsibility. You can just like ease back and say, oh, it wasn't me, you know, it was just circumstances. You know, I tried, like the guy I told you at the beginning of this video, that he tried with that one girl and she didn't want him and she just, you know, turned him down. He tried, but, you know, it didn't work out. So, you know, oh, it's not my fault. It was just, you know, she didn't want me. Circumstances, you know, bad luck. It's easy to fall into that mentality. And you won't be forced to try. And that's why it's so seductive. And that's why it's the easy path. Because if you fail at the one shot, you'll be tempted to just lean back and forget about it and say, you know, it's just not for me. You know, I'm just never going to have a woman. I'm just never going to be a success at whatever thing I want. I'll just be a failure because I had my one shot, but I failed. And so I'm not going to try again. Because, you see, trying is hard. Going from one rejection to the next, always going forward, and swallowing that rejection one after the other like spoonfuls of shit. It's fucking hard. Nobody's saying otherwise. It is fucking difficult. But you see, if you don't eat spoonful after spoonful of shit, you won't get to where you want to be. And at the end of the day, you want to achieve the things that you set your mind to. Because that feeling of finally succeeding, that feeling of fucking 7 different girls on 7 different nights, that feeling of reaching the end zone and spiking the ball and knowing that you made it, that you succeeded, that feeling of like hitting that ball and feeling that beautiful, wonderful crack of the ball against your bat and watching as it zooms way out center field, right? There's nothing better. It is the most addictive high in the world. It's the best high. And the great thing about it is that, unlike illegal drugs, when you get high on success, it makes you better.